Hi there, welcome to today's coding challenge. Today we are coding this beautiful snake game that you see here. I actually coded this already yesterday and I tried to make a video about it, but it took me about 8 hours to make this. So I will try to make it faster now, because 8 hours is too long for a YouTube video. I made this game in JavaScript, obviously it's in the browser, and I used some jQuery and I created all the graphics, which is not much, in just HTML elements and CSS. I should probably make it in the HTML5 canvas, but I don't know that much about that, so I just used what I know. I will probably make a new video in the future where I change this to use the HTML5 canvas and without jQuery, so just vanilla JavaScript. But now let's get into coding. So here I have just a basic HTML file with just a content type, and I have jQuery included here and my style.css and a script.js. And they are here and they are empty right now. So if we go take a look here, we have nothing. So how do we start now? Let's go to the script, and we want to make the game canvas, which is not actually a canvas, it's just a div element. So how do we do that? We could just go here to the index and right here make a div, but that's not what I want to do. So I will create a class called game. And I will have a constructor for the game class. In the constructor, I will create the object for it. So I will assign it to this dot element, and I will create a jQuery object. And then I will add it to the body. And then of course I have to call it, otherwise nothing happens. So I will say const game is new game. And then of course nothing will happen because I don't have any CSS. So let's create some game CSS. Alright, so this just sets a 500 by 500 pixel canvas with a black border, and then this just centers it in the screen. So let's see if this works. It does work. Now we have a game canvas here. What are we going to do next? Then we need a snake on the canvas. So let's create a snake object. And this one also has a constructor, and it should have an element as well. And we have to add it to the body. No, actually, we don't have to add it to the body, we have to add it to the game. So I will give it the game into which it will be added. I will save the game into this object. And then I will add it to the game. And now, of course, I have to make this add snake method in the game. So this takes the snake object and it takes its element and appends it to the game element. So then here I have to say const snake is new snake in this game. Great. And now of course I need to style the snake. So let's create the snake style. Alright, here I have just a 20 by 20 block, and I add a border radius of 50%, so it's going to be round, and I add a background, and then I move it in the middle of the screen. Let's see what happens. It is not in the middle of the screen for some reason. I forgot a 0. Here we have the beginning of a snake. So what are we going to do next? The snake should move all the time. So let's create a draw function, which will handle the drawing of the snake wherever it has to be drawn. This kind of could be a move function, but maybe I will add some other things in here about the drawing of the snake. So this function will position the snake. So this dot element, we will use CSS to position it. And I added this X and Y properties, but I have to now create them. So this dot X is 240 to begin with. This dot Y is 240 to begin with. So it starts out with this, and actually I don't know, I don't need these in here. because I will style it here. Then I have to call the draw consistently so that it will move. So let's create a setInterval function, and in the setInterval function we will set an interval of a function this dot draw, and we will have it run every 50 milliseconds. But now here is a little bit of a problem. This keyword refers to the current object, but in this case it does not refer to it. It refers to the window object or something, because it's in the function inside the setInterval. So there's a couple ways we can do this. I'm not sure what is the correct way, but I think the easiest way is just to put a bind method here and say this. So now this of the snake object will be bound to the this inside this function. Otherwise we can't do it. There's another way we could do this. We could say the snake like this, and we could add a function, an anonymous function here, and pass the snake into the anonymous function and put this inside here. And then we would call this anonymous function with the this of this current object. But I think this does not look that great. Another thing we could do is we could remove this, and we could go here and say setInterval, and we should say this. So we pass it here, and then we have to pass here the snake. So now we pass the this here, but I don't think this is good either. So I will just do the original way, the bind way. And now it should be drawn every 50 milliseconds. Of course, we didn't change anything, so now it's in the top for some reason. Oh, I forgot to change this to this. Okay, now it's in the middle. Now how do we make it move all the time? So we need to change these x and y positions. So if we add here this dot x plus plus, now it will add 1 pixel to the x position every time it calls the draw function, which will be every 50 milliseconds. So now we have a very slow moving snake head here. Now we have to change this direction when we press the arrow keys. So let's do that. Let's create a new function. This dot bind arrow keys. Bind arrow keys. And let's use jQuery for this, because that's how I know how to do it. Document on key down. So here, every time a key is pressed, this function is called and it is passed the event. And the event has the key code. So we check if the event key code is 37. I think this was the left. The key code for the left arrow is 37. If the event key code is 39, I think was right, then this is right. So what do we do when the key code is left or the key code is right? Well, in the traditional snake game, the snake just moves up and down and left and right. But I want to make this free-flowing, free-moving snake. Let the snake be free! So I have to do something different. I have to calculate the angle. So in fact, when I press left or right, I have to change the angle. So I will say this dot change angle. And we will change it by 5, let's say, 5 degrees. And this dot angle, change angle -5. The other way. Left is -5 and right is +5. So now there's no change angle. We have to create the change angle function. So here we just change the angle by the amount of degrees we want. And let's set the angle here to be 0 to begin with. Now, of course, this doesn't do anything. except we can go here and say console log the angle. And in fact, I will move it here. So now if we open the console here and we refresh the page, then if I press right, I get an error. The reason for the error is, again, the bind thing. I use this change angle, so I have to bind this to that function. Otherwise, it's referring to something else. It's referring to the document or the window or something. Let's try this again. Now, if I press left, it goes down, and if I press right, it goes up. Now, of course, if I press long enough, it's going to go over 360, and this is a problem. So let's add here, if this dot angle is greater than 359, then this dot angle equals 0. And if this dot angle is smaller than 0, then we will set it to 359. So now it's never going to be negative or over 360. Let's try it again. So now if I press here, so it goes back to 359. So now we have the angle. Where should the snake go? So then, let's create another function called calculate direction, which will decide where it should move the snake head based on its current angle. What is the next step for it to that angle? Now, how do we solve this? Now, this is solved by trigonometry. So if you know trigonometry, you can easily solve this, and it's just 3 lines of code. But I do not know trigonometry, so I will show you how I did it yesterday without trigonometry. And then I will show you the way how to do it correctly. So here I will get my old code, which is very beautiful. Here is my massive calculate direction function, which works. Trust me, it works. So I just need to add this speed variable, which is the speed, how fast the snake moves. I will say this.speed equals 5. And then I have to call this calculate direction function somewhere. I will call it here. This.calculate direction. So let's see what happens now. So now, look at this. I can move with the arrow keys beautifully. Now, this does not work perfectly, but it works. I will now show you how to do it properly. First, I will explain this code. So, there are multiple if statements here, and I will open some photo editor to explain to you how I did this. So, imagine here we have a perfect circle, which represents the angles. So I have 0 here, and I have 90 here, and so on. So now, if I want to move in the x-axis, if I add to the x-axis, I will move to the right. If I add to the y-axis, I will move down. So then, what if I want to move here, for example? Well, then I have to add both to the x-axis and to the y-axis. And then, if I'm moving this way, I have to subtract from the x-axis. If I'm moving up, I have to subtract from the y-axis. So what my code does is it checks, okay, well, if we are moving in a direction from 0 up to 180, then that means we have to add to the x direction. Otherwise, we have to subtract if we are on this side. And then, if we are moving from 90 to 270, then we have to add to the y direction. If we are moving from 270 to 0, or from 0 to 90, then we have to subtract. So I have all these if statements here and all this stuff, and it looks terrible, but it works. As you can see here, I can move this around and it works great. But now in trigonometry, there's this thing called the hypotenuse of a triangle. Have you heard about this? You probably have heard about it in school and thought, why do I have to learn this? This is why. If you want to make a snake game, you need to know the hypotenuse of a triangle. So let's see what is a hypotenuse. Hypotenuse, the longest side of a triangle. So let's go to the Wikipedia page. So here we have the hypotenuse. So if we are moving to the right at a speed of 5 pixels, then we just have to add this much to the x-axis. If we are going 5 pixels down, we have to add 5 pixels to the y-axis. But if we're going at an angle, then the hypotenuse should be 5 pixels. So then we can calculate when we know that the hypotenuse will be the speed of the snake, and we know this angle because we know the angle of the snake. Then we can calculate what would be the base of the triangle and the height of the triangle with the given hypotenuse and the given angle. So then we can generate the exact number. Now, what you need to do is you need to use the sine and cosine functions. So I will delete all of this. There's like 50 lines of code. Everything goes away. And instead I will say, let angle in radians, because the sine and cosine functions take the radians, not the degrees. Now, don't ask me what are radians. They are some different unit of degree measurement. Anyway, here is how you calculate the radians. First you take this dot angle, so the angle from 0 to 360, and you multiply it by math.pi divided by 180. So then you can calculate this dot x plus equals this dot speed times the cosine of the radians. So math dot cos of the angle in radians. And this dot y plus equals this dot speed times the sine of the angle in radians. So that is all you need. 3 lines of code. And it should do the same thing but better. So let's go back here and let's see if we can move it. Look at this. It moves beautifully. If I turn left, it goes left. If I turn right, it goes right. Perfect. And what is even better, here we have this change angle function, which checks if the angle is too much, then go to 0, and if it's too little, then go to 359. We don't need this at all, because the radian calculation and the cosine already does this, so we don't need that. Let's go back and see that it works. Yes, we can move beautifully. All right, what do we do next? Well, one problem is that we are going over the canvas. So let's fix that. So I will delete this console log here. And we need to see if the snake head is off the canvas, then we will make it appear on the other side. So first of all, I have to add to the CSS overflow hidden. So now if it goes here, it disappears there. But we want to have it appear on the other side. So I will add to the draw function this dot check overflow, and we will create the function. Now this should check that if, let's go back to the drawing board. So if we have the game here, perfect square, and we have the snake here. So how do we check if the snake is here? So we have to check if the right side of the snake is on the left side of the canvas. Then we have to put it on the other side. And then how do we check if it's here? we have to say if the top of the snake is farther down than the bottom of the canvas. And then if it's here, we have to say if the left side of the snake is greater than the right side of the canvas. And it can be here as well. So if the bottom of the snake is smaller than the top of the canvas. So how do we do this? So let's do this one first. So how do we check the right side? This is your right. The right side of the snake. Well, it is going to be its x position plus its width. So we have to save the width somewhere. So let's call it this dot. Let's call it size, because it's going to be the same width and height because it's round. So let's say this size is 20. So then if this, which is the snake, if this dot x plus this dot size is greater than smaller than 0, then we have to put it on the opposite side. So then we'll say this dot x equals this dot game dot width. Now we have to save this width somewhere. So when I create the game, I will say that this dot width is 500 and this dot height is 500. So when the snake's x is going to be the same as the width of the canvas, then it will be off the canvas on the opposite side. So then let's do another one. So if it's on the other side, then if this dot x is greater than this dot game dot width, then this dot x has to be 0, but not 0 because then it's already on the screen. It has to be 0 minus this dot size. And we can actually do this just like this, minus this size. It's going to be the same thing. So that should work in the x-axis. Then how about the y-axis? If this dot y plus this dot size, so this is going to be the bottom of the snake. If that is greater than this dot game dot height, now actually we do not need to use the size because we need to check the top of the snake if we're going off the screen below. Then this dot y will be minus this dot size. So then it's going to be up there hidden and then it's going to appear from there. And then we need one more. So if this dot y plus this dot size, now we have to use plus this dot size. So if the bottom of the snake is negative, is less than 0, then it will be hidden up here. So then we will say this dot y equals this dot game dot height. This should do it. Let's see. So now it goes there and it appears on the other side. And then if I turn it up to go there, it appears from below. And if I go down, it will appear from up there. Great, it works. Next thing we have to do is we have to draw the tail on the snake, because now it's just a ball, it's not a snake. So how do we do that? So we have to set a tail for the snake. So let's say this dot tail equals a new array. And let's make a function here, this dot init tail. So this will initialize the tail in the beginning. So let's do this. We want to have a specific amount of tails or balls behind that ball in the beginning. So it's going to have a tail to begin with. So let's say this. Let's say the starting amount of tail is going to be 7. And then 7 times we will add a tail. So we'll say this dot add tail. So now we have to create this add tail method. So how do we do that? Add tail. We should say tail is new tail. We have to create this object. Sorry. And then this dot tail dot push tail. So we push the tail object into the array of tails we set here. But now we don't have this tail class, so we will create it. Class tail. It should also have an element. And it will be a div again. And we should pass in the snake here so we can know which snake this tail belongs to. And then we can add this tail to the game of the snake. Like this. And I have to say this dot snake is snake. So we have to then add here new tail this. So create a new tail with the snake, the current snake, as the argument to the constructor function. And we add that to the tail array. And then we append the tail to the snake's game element. The element of the snake's game. And then we have to style the tail. It's actually going to be the same style as the snake, at least for now. So I will just do this. Now, what this does is it will add the tails over there in the top corner. So actually, I want to put the tails so that they follow this snake head. So how do I do that? Well, first of all, I have to keep track of the position where the snake head has been, so I can move the tails to those positions. So let's create this dot position history, and it's an array as well. And then every time we draw it, actually I should not have this here anymore. We will say this dot position history push, and we will push an object in there with the x, this dot x, and y, this dot y. So now we will save every position the snake head has been into this position history array. So now we need a method that will position all of the snake's tails. So position tails. We will loop through all of the tails. Tail.move. Let's create a move function for the tail. And then we will pass it the coordinates. Now where do we get the coordinates? We should get them from the position history. So in fact, first we should loop through the position history starting from the most recent position. And then we should save as many positions from the history as there are tails. So let me create here a new array. And then I will add all the positions into that array. And then once we have enough positions from the history, then we will stop, because we don't have to get any more than we have the tails. So if the length of the tail positions, so the amount of saved tail positions, if that is greater than or equal to the amount of tails there are, tail.length, then we can break. And actually, we should not break, we should actually delete the rest of the history, because we don't need to keep track of the whole thing of the whole game. So we will say this: if it's smaller, then we will add it. If we still need to add the position histories, then we add. Otherwise, we delete that position history. So we will say this position history splice from the I position one element. Perhaps I could splice at once the whole rest of the history, but I don't know how to do that. But this should work. So now, after this loop, we should have as many tail positions as we have tail objects. And then we can save the index of the tail here, and we will move it. We will move the tail to the tail positions index. And now we have to make the move method. I will make it here. And this will just move the element to the position from the position object. And now, of course, we have to call the position tails in the draw method. Now, let's see if this works. Oh, we are getting some errors here. In 136, line 136, there is no position X. I think we have to add a check here. If this actually exists, then we move it. Because in the beginning there is no, it doesn't have enough positions. So let's say if type of this is not undefined, then move it there. Let's see if that helps. Now we have a beautiful snake here that looks a bit more like a worm. This is actually pretty cool. You could do this too, but this is not what I want. I want the balls to be spaced out. But this is very interesting. So how do I space out the balls? Let's add here a counter. Let position count is 0. And then let's add the position count on every iteration. And then if the position count is more than, let's say, 5, so we have already read 5 positions from the history, then we will add the tail to that position. And then we have to reset the counter. So position count is 0. So let's see what this does. Okay, that looks great. Now, it had the tails up there in the top corner at first, and then it added them one by one to the tail. So let me hide them. So right now you can see them still here, but then when the snake moves enough, then it will put them all in the line. So let me hide them. Can I just put here display none, and then I will show it. First of all, I will put this dot show, this dot element dot show, and here as well this dot element dot show. So now if I do this, you can only see them after they are generated. So now I have this beautiful snake here that can move around, and this is fun. But now, well, I can't hit myself actually because of the length of the tail and the amount of angle that it turns. So I can't hit myself. Let me add another ball of tail. Let's do 10. So now I have 10 of these, and now I can go through myself. So now I should check if I'm hitting myself, then I should say game over. So how do we do that? We need to check the collision. Let's create a function, check tail collision. So we have to loop through all of the tails, all of the pieces of tail, and then check if the head of the snake is on top of one of the pieces of tail. So this dot tail for each. For every piece of tail, we say if tail hits snake, then it's game over. Let's first just console log game over. And then we have to create this tail hit snake function. So let's go to tail class and say hits snake. So now we have to do a similar thing to this check overflow, but we have to say if this dot x, so the tail's x, if the left side of the tail is smaller than the right side of the snake, this dot snake dot x plus this dot snake size. So if the tail's left side is smaller than the snake's right side, and if the tail's right side is greater than the snake's left side. And I need the size for this tail as well. And if the top of the tail is smaller than the bottom of the snake, and if the bottom of the tail is greater than the top of the snake. Then, if this is true, then we are hitting each other. But actually, I can just move this in one line, and I will just say return the result of this statement. So that should work. Let's see what happens. Nothing happens. So that should work, but I have to call the function here, check tail collision. So every time it moves, check tail collision. It does not seem to work. Here is the problem. I do not save this .x for the tail, so it's always 0. So I have to say this .x is position.x. And let's initialize it here. And let's run it again. Now we get game over if I go over myself. Great, but that's not what I want. I want to stop the game and then show game over. So let's do that. Let's say this.game game over. And then we will create that function in the game class. Game over. So what should we do in the game over? First we need to stop the snake in its tracks. So let's say we don't know the snake right now. So let's save it. Let's say this dot snake is snake. I have to do it here. So when we add the snake to the game, we set it here. But actually, I want to do it like this. I want to have multiple snakes maybe in the future. So I'll say this snake's push snake. So I add the snake to the snakes array of this game object. So I will create that. This dot snakes is an array. And then I can loop through all of the snakes. If the game is over, then all of the snakes will be stopped. And then I have to create the stop function for the snake. I just set this stopped equals true, and I will initialize it here. And then when I draw it, if the snake is stopped, then I don't draw it. And then what else will happen? The snake will stop, and then I have to show game over. So I will add an overlay element to the game. So, and inside the game over overlay, I will have an H1 that says game over. Then I will have another element called points or score. And then I will have a button that says play again. And then I will append this to the game. And actually, I don't want to append it every time. I want to append it if it's not there already. In fact, I should probably put this in the constructor. So when we construct the game, we add the game over overlay and append it to the game. It's just going to be hidden. That's good. And then here we just say this game over overlay dot show, or let's do slide down, which is the jQuery animation for showing an element. And then let's say it's this dot game over overlay. So now when the game is over, we get all the snakes and stop them, and then we show the game over overlay. Now let's style the game over overlay. So we'll have game over. So this will just generate an overlay, and let's put a z index for it so that it will be on top of everything. And then we're going to have the h1 in there. I will remove the margins from it, at least the margin top. And I'll put everything centered. And I will add another wrapper inside this. So then I can use the display flex align items center. And then the wrapper, I will have a margin auto. So then it should be in the middle. Do I even need the display flex? Not sure. And then let's see what this does. If I go here, game over, play again. Pretty good. I will style the play again button. And then I will add this points text here, even though I don't calculate any points right now, but I will say score, something like this, and I will then style it. Why can't I see the score? The score is under the play again button. I will change the play again button to display inline block. So now I see the score, and I will add some margin to the score. Okay, that's pretty good. And then of course I have to hide it in the beginning. So I usually do just display none, but can I use it if I want to have a flexbox display? Because then jQuery, how does jQuery know what display to put it back into? Let me see first, do I even need the flex? I do need the flex. So let's do this. I think I did it already, so that if I do game over, it almost works. So I have another problem with the this keyword here. So here I think that this is referring to maybe the object that we're looping through or something. So I think I can just bind it here, this. And let's try this again. If I now hit myself, game over, but the display did not work. So what does the jQuery use for it? Opacity 0. Nope. Visibility hidden. Nope. I will just use jQuery to hide it. Then it will do whatever it wants. So I will say this dot game overlay, game over overlay hide. So I will hide it in the beginning. So now it should work. And then it appears. Game over. Play again. So now I have to create the play again button. So what does that do? I will make a new function, this dot bind buttons, and I will say bind buttons, and I will do document on click play again. This dot reset game, so we will reset the game, and I have to bind this again. and I will return false here so that the URL doesn't change. It doesn't jump to the top of the page. So what will happen when I reset the game? Reset game. First of all, I need to remove the game over overlay. I can use slide up to do it, so it will animate up. Then I have to start the snake again. I will say start. And I have to reset the snake's position. So now I have to make two functions. First of all, I have to say start, and that says stopped is false. And then I have to say reset position, and it should be reset to this. And the angle and speed should be reset as well. Well, speed is gonna be probably the same, but let's reset it anyway. And let's reset the size to, if in the future we want to change the size of the snake as time goes on or something. And we should have another one called reset tail. And that should delete all of the tails. So for all of the tails, tail.remove. And we have to add that function as well. And then we have to add the original tails. So this dot add starting tail. And it is here. It is actually init tail. So I will do this. Init tail. And we have to reset the position history and the tails array. So now let's see if this works. So now if I hit myself, game over, and then I click play again, it okay, it almost worked. It left the tail objects there, but then it moves them to the new one. That is funny. What did I do wrong? I don't have to bind this here. Remove. So the problem is I didn't call reset tail. So when I reset the game, I have to reset the snake's tail as well. So now it works. Now we can start over a new game. Great. So now I think by this point the snake is a bit hungry because it doesn't have any food. So let's create some food for the snake to eat. So let's create a food class. And let's give it the snake, which snake this food is for. Well, it depends how we're gonna do. If we want to have multiple snakes, do they all have their own foods or can everybody eat the same food? Well, let's just call it the food for this current snake. So we need an element. And we have to add the element to the snake's game. And then we have to put it in a random position. So let's say this.x will be math.random times this snake game width minus this dot size, so the size of the food. So if I don't add the minus this size, then the food might be off screen. And then let's round this. And then this dot y equals like that. So it gets a random x-axis position and a random y-axis position. And then let's just say this dot draw and make a draw function. And we need some styling for the food. So let's just say food has the same style as well, but then food has a background of green. And then of course we have to add some food to the game. So where should we put this? When we initialize the snake, we add some food for it. We say here, this.add food. I think we have to do just that. That's all we need. It's add a new food and then it will be added into the game. So let's try. No food. I need to show the food because I set the display to none. So I have to show it separately. Or I can just add it here, display block, so that the food will be shown right away. And I have another error. I have to say this.snake equals snake. And I have to say element. So now we have a food there, but then we cannot eat it. So now we have to figure out how to eat the food. So what should we do? We should say here, when we draw the snake, this.check food. And then we create a check food function. If this eats food, then we add some points. This.game.score plus plus. And actually I will create a method, add score. And then we have to create the eats food method. And now we have to check the collision with the food. So we can use the same thing as the collision with the tail. So we just copy this over. And we have to change snake to food. And where we add the food, we have to make sure that we are saving that this.food is new food, this. So that should work. And then we have to add the add score method to the game. So we create add score. This.score plus plus. And in fact, we should draw the score on the screen. This.show score. This.score element text will be score this.score. And we will initialize here the same way as the game over overlay. We will say this.score element is going to be that, and then add it to the game. And we have to style that element. And actually I will move it to -1 pixel and -1 pixel so that there won't be a border up there. Let's see if I did everything I needed. So now I have a score 0 over there. And I hit. I still have the wrong score here. But let's try to eat the food if we can. Score is not a number now. So first of all, we have to make a new food. So we have to say this.food.remove and this add food. So we remove the old food and we add a new food. So we have to create a food remove method. So remove like that. And then something was wrong with the add score function. We have to initialize the score. And when we reset the game, we have to set the score to 0 again. Okay, that should do it. So now if we eat this food here, it disappears and we get a new food and the score is going up. That is great. If I can eat that other food, yes. And if I hit myself, then game is over. And if I click play again, the score is back to 0. But now I have to show the score in the game over screen. So actually I could add another span element here and I can say class is score number. So then I can change the score number automatically everywhere. So I do this and I do the same here. And then instead of the score element, I will say score element. Actually, I will do this dot element dot find score number. So all the score number classes will get the text of the score. So now it updates it everywhere that I want to use it. So now if I go here and I try to eat that food and then I eat myself, the score is 1. And I play again, score is 0. Great. So next I want to save a high score. So let's do this. Let's save the high score to the local storage of the browser. So let's say get high score will just return local storage get item snake high score. And should we make it a number? And then set high score. This will just say local storage set item snake high score to score. So then when the game is over, we check if this dot score is greater than this dot get high score. Then this dot set high score to this score. And let's show the high score as well. So yeah, show score and we will add high score. And this will be this get high score. And we will add another element. High score, and we should call here this dot show high score so that it will be populated with the actual high score. And now if I open this again, I need to style it. Alright, now we have a high score, and the high score is 11 because I coded this already previously, so there is already something in the local storage. Let me change the local storage so I don't have to get to high score 11 anymore. So I will delete that and let's refresh this page. And now the high score is 0 and score is 0. So let me try to make a new high score. That should be already a new high score. Let's then say this. Score is 1. Play again. I don't update the high score. You can see here in the local storage it actually did it, but it didn't update the high score here. So let's fix that. Show score and show high score. So now high score is 1. And now if I make a high score of 2, it should update. Score is 2, play again. And now high score is 2. Great. Alright, so there it is. There's my beautiful snake game. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. There's one thing that I still want to do. I want to give the snake some eyes. And I should fix that problem as well. The food is now off screen. I should add parentheses here. Otherwise it's not going to work, because now it can be a negative number. I want to have a random number as this as the maximum. Now it took this random number and then subtracted the size, so it didn't work. So that works. And then the eyes. I want to create eyes for the snake head. So I will do it this way. I will add 2 divs for eyes. I1 and I2. And then I will go here and I will say I1 will be width 4 pixels, height 4 pixels, and a border radius of 50%. It's going to be a round black ball. So background will be black. And position will be absolute. And top will be, I don't know, 5 pixels. Left will be 5 pixels. And then I'll do I2, which will be the same thing, but it's going to be right 5 pixels. So now if I refresh this, we have eyes on the snake, but the eyes are now always at the top of the snake. So how do I fix that? I will rotate it. So when I change the angle, I will also change the angle of the snake head. So this dot element CSS transform rotate, and I will add the degrees. So this dot angle degrees. Let's see what happens. Yes, it works. But of course, because it starts to go like this, I have to say that the left is still 5 pixels at the I2, but the bottom is 5 pixels. Is that correct? No, it's not. It's on the other side. So I have to say top and right and bottom and right. Now it's going in the right direction. Now I have eyes on the snake. That is great. Now that's another problem that could be fixed in this game. The food can be on top of the snake, and I think the food can be also behind the scoreboards. So there's a couple bugs you could figure out. But for now, I am happy with this. And I hope you like this video, and I hope you try to make your own snake game, and then post me a link in the comments to your GitHub page where I can check out how you made it. Or you can check out this game on GitHub at the link in the description, and then make a pull request for your updates that you can make it better. So thanks for watching today's video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.